apparently, if you look at my life, it wasn't more than I can handle. I can say that by faith, because looking at it, and when I look back at it now, I wonder how I made it through all that. My husband and I were living in Northern California, and he was a logger. One day, while my husband was at work, I was working just inside a large picture window in our living room, and our little son was right outside the door playing with a kitten. I decided to finish a short sewing project, and I looked down to take a couple of stitches and looked up, and he wasn't there. Panic started to set in to my heart, and I had a strong sense that I would not see my son alive again. And we continued searching, and the police force brought in the search and rescue teams. And also, since we lived nearby two rivers, the Klamath River being one of them, they brought in divers as well to search the rivers, to no avail. And the search went on for about 2 weeks. And I think it was probably after about the third week, I kind of gave up that he would be found anytime soon. And I think the law enforcement agencies more or less gave up as well. In the meantime, my husband decided to turn to alcohol to work through his grief, and consequently was taken away. So I was left there in this unfamiliar territory with no one, and then there was no Adventist church around, which I had grown up Adventist. So I did not have a church or a pastor to go to. I thought that the best way to handle this whole situation would be to commit suicide. And so I sat down in the bathroom, and I had the pills in my hand, and I really had a talk with the Lord, and I bared my soul to the Lord and told him, I said, I can't endure this. I don't know why you're letting me go through this. I'm angry with you for letting this happen to me, and I feel abandoned, and I have no one to go to, and you're not helping me. And I looked down in my hand and looked at the pills, and at that precise moment, a thought came to mind. This thought was, have you asked me if it's okay for you to do this? And I said, well, no, I haven't. Well, in my possession from my mother's demise, I had her Bible. I thought of going to it, and I felt like that was a prompting from the Lord. I opened it up to Jeremiah 31:16 and 17, and I'll summarize it for you. And it says, weep no more, refrain your eyes from tears, because in the end your children will be brought back from the land of the enemy. And that was when I saw the markings there on those two verses with my name written in the column beside them. And that was because my mother had been praying for me for years. It was a process, for this whole healing thing. And so I came about slowly as far as my faith walk goes. Then my husband came back, and we were reunited, living in Riverside, and then we got the call. This is 3.5 months later that we got the call that our little son, his remains had been found. We were asked to come back to Northern California and identify his remains in 2 places. One was with the sheriff's office, and the other was with UC Davis, where his remains had been taken. Just horrific experience to see your child there. I think I'd pretty much passed through the anger and resentment toward God. And I knew that he was helping me pass through that. As the story began to unfold, I was able to come across persons who had been familiar with these types of certain groups and organizations that did these events where children are kidnapped for the purpose of taking their life. I was still struggling a bit with walking with the Lord because of the fear and the anxiety now that I experienced from having this event happen. My husband and I decided not to have any more children because neither one of us just didn't want to go through anything like that again. So we did the typical routine for not having any more children. And the Lord surprised us. And I became pregnant. The interesting thing that I knew when I became pregnant was I was confident that I was having a son. And it gave me joy. And here the Lord took something that was so negative and took my fears and addressed them right where I was. People would say, Donna, don't just believe you're going to have a son. You need to plan to have a daughter. And I didn't. I had a wonderful son born in 1970. And this is probably about 3 years later. And we were happy, and the Lord took away all my fears about raising another child. My husband never became a Christian, and due to alcoholism, it became unsafe for our son and I to stay with him, and we had to divorce, and because of safety reasons. Well, over the 30 years or so when I was going through the healing process of my son's demise, I was also faced with some other tragic events, such as my father being shot. And then later on, our son, when he was, my second son, was to find out that my ex-husband had also been murdered. So these were things that I had to process as well along my journey of healing from my son's demise. And 2 Samuel 7 was probably my founding text, because every time at every event and every stage, I could look back and say, thus far has the Lord helped me. And I did ask the question, why? To God, why does this happen? And my conclusion of that matter is this. God has a plan for every individual on this planet, even murderers. If they need to live on without ever going to jail or serving time, so be it. Because God has a plan for them too. They might be my neighbor in heaven. I never know. Because there's no prosecution that can bring my son back. There's no law that can, even if the person died, there would be nothing that would soothe my soul without bringing my son back. And I was at that point confident and comfortable with the Lord, having allowed him to go and having allowed my father to go, and let it be. I have to say, just plain and simple, you have the confidence in God, you believe in him. He says he will not give you more than you can bear. Humanly looking at that, it would seem like it's more than you could bear. But he said it wasn't. Therefore, I am here. And it just has to be that simple for me.